You hate Maddie Nolan. Probably. Especially if you finish Season 2, which, if you haven't, I'm sorry. Please get on that before watching this. Anyway, I'm here to tell you that contrary to popular belief, Maddie did absolutely nothing wrong. Here is my case. So, obviously Maddie is most hated for siding with Ambessa in the Battle of Piltover and betraying Caitlyn, nearly executing her on the spot. On the surface level, it's pretty hard to argue that this isn't an incredibly evil thing to do. But like with most characters in Arcane, her motivations become increasingly clear when you begin paying attention to the little details. With that in mind, we must consider Maddie and Caitlyn's opposing accents.
If every enforcer had a heart like yours, we could take on Noxus itself.
I will lead a strike team into Zaun with 3 objectives.
Did you pick up on it? Maddie is Scottish, and Caitlyn is English. Now, this is already practically an argument ender, as this implies Caitlyn isn't a human being with rights, and nothing Maddie does to her can actually be condemned. But beyond that, it also helps flesh out Maddie's character. Everyone knows that a cultural staple of Scotland is everlasting hatred of England, and a dedication to all acts necessary for the elimination of the so-called English people. I can speak to this personally, as my grandmother was from Scotland, making me roughly 25% Scottish. I spend approximately 25% of my life on my anti-English grind set, which is of course the reason for, among other things, my 2-month break from YouTube recently, to which the creation of an hour-and-a-half-long retrospective was wholly irrelevant. Through this lens, we as viewers are able to properly understand who Maddie is as a person. Arcane is a masterclass in humanizing its characters, with so many standout examples. For instance, we see Sevika's undying loyalty to the nation of Zaun manifest in interesting and complex ways. Her concept of loyalty lies not so much with following one specific person, but whoever at the time promises the best chance of liberation. And we see this as she abandons Vander to serve Silco, works with Jinx after Silco's death, and finally inspires the Zaunites herself. Maddie is much the same, equally loyal to her own nation, not Piltover, not Noxus, but Scotland. Questions naturally arise from this reading, of course. If Maddie's motivation is to carry out a righteous conquest against the English and eliminate those scum of the earth one by one, why does she initially enter a relationship with Caitlyn? Well, this scene in the bedroom is deeply interesting. Originally, I thought it depicted the tragedy of a Scot's ultimate betrayal, the willful romantic and possibly sexual association with a subhuman. After all, in Scotland, there is more honor in fucking a sheep than there is in fucking an English person. However, this encounter is recontextualized after Act 3 as an obvious manipulation tactic on Maddie's part that serves as a means to an end for her goals. There is a common saying to keep your friends close and your enemies closer, and Maddie had to employ this strategy to get the chance to assassinate Caitlyn. This adds an interesting dimension to Maddie's character, because we understand that she is so loyal to Scotland that she is willing to sacrifice her own dignity by mingling with an English woman just so she can carry out her righteous quest. This arguably makes her the most heroic character in all of Arcane. This is especially made clear by the fact that Maddie aims for Caitlyn's neck, clearly hoping to make her suffer. According to utilitarian ethics, the greater the suffering of English people, the higher the pleasure of the entire world, so this is just an extra layer of thoughtfulness on Maddie's part. Despite all of you fools cheering on her death in the end, pay attention to who was ultimately responsible for stopping her. Mel, another English person. The narrow reading of this killing as a moment of catharsis and the foiling of an evil plan reflects the horrible media literacy of today's generation. Dig deeper, people. Now, I can hear all of you idiots typing in the comments, actually, Maddie works with Ambessa, who also sounds English and is Mel's mother. Damn, you got me, except for one thing. We already have clear evidence of Maddie manipulating people and getting close to them before turning on them in favor of her mission. Who's to say Maddie didn't fully intend to turn on Ambessa later? She likely figured Noxus would win the battle, meaning she would be able to advance her plan more efficiently by siding with Ambessa temporarily to kill Caitlyn. Who knows how long she was planning this move? It's impossible to say for sure, but Maddie is surely up there with Silco when it comes to the masterminds of the show. And yet, in spite of all that, she just dies. Bested by English scum, no less. I'll admit, for a while I wondered if Arcane had dropped everything they were building up with Maddie just to waste her, knowing the like-minded sheep in the audience would lap up her death, placing fan service over substantive writing and insulting my people in the process. Was that all this was? Had we come so close to greatness only to fall in the end? But then, I remembered something. I used to think Arcane, for all its supposed progressiveness, was all too willing to spit in the face of Scotland when my main man Benzo was killed off all the way back in Season 1, Episode 3. My view on this matter shifted when Benzo was given a happy life in an alternate timeline in Season 2, Episode 7. Clearly, these writers do care about my critical representation, so they couldn't have dropped the ball here. But then, what is their ultimate plan? How will Maddie get justice? I had to consider it for a long time, but then it finally clicked. Tell me, who was ultimately responsible for killing Ambessa? That's right, LeBlanc. I'm not even going to pretend to know anything about wider League of Legends lore, but here's what I do know. LeBlanc is a French name. The moment I made this connection, it all started making sense. Firstly, LeBlanc's evil became all the more apparent when I realized her Frenchness. But secondly, this is important because historically speaking, Scotland frequently allied with France against England. From the Scottish point of view, the French have always been seen as a necessary evil to help rid the world of the English. And when all is said and done, they too will be disposed of. What does this mean? Well, to put it simply, Maddie must have known. She must have known Mel had fallen under the sphere of influence of the Black Rose. She must have known LeBlanc would kill Ambessa, and later that Mel would venture to Noxus to pursue her. This was also carefully planned, meticulously orchestrated. Maddie clearly worked with LeBlanc and Ambessa, driving the French and English into an ultimate conflict that I predict in the Noxus spin-off will lead to a civil war in the nation and the mutual destruction of the two axes of evil. And of course, I don't think we've seen the last of Maddie at all. There's countless precedent for revivals in Arcane, and through Ambessa, Maddie may also have worked with Singed. If Singed could bring his daughter back, who's to say Maddie couldn't be next? Who's to say Maddie wasn't aware of the risk going into the battle and didn't come up with an infinite amount of contingency plans? I, for one, believe in her. I am predicting now that the climax of the Noxus spin-off will involve Maddie's return as she conquers the ashes of the nation left by the Civil War, giving rise to the new Scottish Empire, which will promptly conquer Piltover and finish what she started. You thought Caitlyn was a dictator? You've seen nothing. Nothing, I tell you. This will be glorious, and I, for one, can't wait to see it all play out. I can't wait to relish the looks on your faces when you realize I was right. Savor what time you have left in your life before reality stares you down like the barrel of Maddie's gun. In the meantime, I will remain her strongest soldier. I stand with my cancelled wife, indeed. Hey, folks. If you're hearing this, you're at the end of the video. Congratulations. If you enjoyed, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and check out my Patreon for perks like early access to videos, your name in my credits, and more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Despite all of you fools cheering on her death in the end, pay attention to who is ultimately responsible for topping her. for topping... Caitlyn, probably.